Good. Today, we're going to be talking about verse 35 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. In this verse, Bhagavan defines what is the real siddhi. Siddhi is a Sanskrit word that means accomplishment. Generally, very often it is used in the sense of paranormal powers. There are said to be Ashta Siddhis. I can't remember what they are. Eight different kinds of paranormal powers, which Bhagavan has clearly taught us in, for example, in some verses of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu and Bandham. These are not a proper spiritual goal. The only true spiritual goal is annihilation of ego, and anyone who seeks siddhis, they are seeking it only for the aggrandizement of ego. So it is diametrically opposed to the true spiritual path. But there are many people who think that gaining supernatural powers, they take them to be divine powers. They take it to be a sign of spiritual advancement. That you can basically do magical things. But that has nothing to do with true spirituality, which is nothing but the eradication of ego. So Bhagavan defines here what is the true spiritual accomplishment, what is the true siddhi. So in the first verse of this, in the first sentence of this verse, Bhagavan says, siddhamāy yuḻporuḻait, tērndu iruttal siddhi. This is the sentence in which he's defining what is true siddhi, what is the true accomplishment. The meaning of this sentence is, the basic meaning is being, knowing the substance, which exists as accomplished, is accomplishment. That implies being as one actually is, knowing poruḻ, the real substance, which is oneself. This is siddham. Siddham means what is accomplished. The implication here is that it is always accomplished. Is siddhi, that is, it is a real accomplishment. There are two words Bhagavan uses here, tērndu and iruttal. Tērndu is an adverbial participle, and iruttal is a verbal noun. In English, we don't the form of verb forms ending in "in" can be used as nouns, or can be used as adverbial participles, or as adjectival participles. For example, if we say running is good for the health, there running is a noun, is a verbal noun. If we say running people reach faster than walking people, we're using running as a adjective. Or if we say running to the station, I caught the train, running is there used as an adverbial participle. So, but in Tamil, these different parts of speech have different forms. So, tērndu iruttal, if you translate literally into English, it means knowing being, but that doesn't, or being knowing, but it doesn't explain what the grammatical role of each of these words in the sentence. Being, iruttal, it's a verbal noun, so it is the subject of the sentence. Tērndu is an adverbial participle, so it has a subsidiary function. It's the main verb of an adverbial clause. So the main clause of the sentence is iruttal siddhi. That means being is accomplishment. Being is siddhi. But being here, we always exist. So what's it special about being? The implication here is not just being, but it's not being in the sense of the ego exists, not existing in the sense of ego exists, but existing in being in the sense of being as we really are, being what we really are, or just being. Just being is siddhi, you can take it. Or being as we really are is siddhi. In the adverbial clause, one says poruḻai tērndu. That means knowing substance. Porul here, this is a word that Bhagavan often uses in Tamil. It's more or less equivalent to the Sanskrit word viṭṭu in the range of meanings and the sense in which it's used. So, porul here means the substance in the sense of the real substance, what actually exists. Bhagavan has used this word in many verses in Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. For example, he's in the very first verse of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, the first Mangalam verse, he uses the term yuḻporuḻait. Yuḻporuḻait means existing substance. He uses it as a synonym for the word he used in the first sentence is uḻḷadu. In the second sentence, he talks about uḻļporuḻait. Uḻļporuḻait is the same as uḻḷadu. Uڵļadu means what exists. Uḻļporuḻait means existing substance. The reason in Advaita philosophy, substance and form are often distinguished. And one analogy that is often used is gold and gold ornaments. The substance of all gold ornaments is gold. The different ornaments are just different forms. What is real is the substance. The form is just a transitory appearance. If you have a gold necklace, you can melt it and make it into a bangle or into a ring or into an earring or something. The form is just the outward appearance. But what is real is the substance. So it's in that sense that the word substance is used. The real substance is what actually exists, what we actually are. Our true nature is the real substance. As I say, Bhagavan refers to it in the first Mangalam verse. He also refers to the first verse in which he defines what he means by poruḻ, verse 7. In verse 7, he says, though the world and awareness here in this context means the mind, that which is aware of the world, though the world and awareness arise and subside simultaneously, the world shines by awareness. Awareness, as I say here, means mind, the awareness that is aware of things other than itself, that is mind or ego. And then in the next sentence, he defines what is poruḻ, saying, only that which shines without appearing or disappearing, as the word he uses is idam. Idam means the place or space or location or site or ground, as the ground for the appearing and disappearing of the world, and that awareness, meaning mind, is poruḻ. So what he's saying here is what the real substance is only that which shines without ever appearing or disappearing as the foundation for the appearing and disappearing of the world and mind. And he says, he adds one more clause here. He says, ōrndāl poruḻ. Actually, that the words are slightly in a slightly different order in the verse, but ōrndāl poruḻ means the real substance, which is ṭōrndām. Ṭōrndām means purna, the whole. So what Bhagavan means when he talks about poruḻ, unless the context obviously suggests otherwise, what he means is the real substance, that which actually exists, which is the infinite whole. So when he talks here about knowing poruḻ, he means knowing what actually exists. In other words, knowing our real nature. Let's see, this poruḻai tērndu is a subsidiary clause to the main subject, which is iruttal. So being, knowing the reality, is what poruḻai tērndu iruttal means, and that is siddhi. But one also says, and it includes another relative or adjectival clause here to describe poruḻ. He says, siddhamāy, which means which exists as siddham. Siddham means what is accomplished. The implication here is that it is always accomplished. That is our real nature. We are always that. It's not something that we have to accomplish anew. If we rising as ego, we remain as poruḻ, as the real substance, what we actually are. So, as I say, the whole sentence means being, knowing the substance, which exists as accomplished, is accomplishment. That implies being as one actually is, knowing the real substance, which is oneself, which exists as siddham, what is always accomplished, is real siddhi. So this is Bhagavan's definition of siddhi. According to Bhagavan, though he doesn't use any word here to mean alone, the implication here is that this alone is real siddhi. So just being as we actually are, I mean, being without rising as ego, that is real siddhi. How to be as we actually are? By knowing ourselves as we actually are. So long as we know anything other than ourselves, so long as we're aware of anything other than ourselves, we are ego. When we know ourself alone, when we know nothing other than ourselves, that is pure awareness, that is what we actually are, that is poruḻ. So knowing poruḻ means just being the pure awareness that we actually are. In the Kalivemba version of this verse, Bhagavan added one more adverbial clause at the beginning of this sentence. That adverbial clause is ondi uλλam, which means the mind merging. The implication is the mind merging within, or mind merging into that poruḻ. He doesn't specify merging into what, but that is obviously the implication. Otherwise, the mind merging back into its source. When we, instead of facing outwards to be aware of things other than ourselves, when we turn our entire attention back to face ourself alone, to be aware of ourself alone, the ego or mind thereby subsides and merges back into its source. That is what Bhagavan is referring to here as ondi uλλam. So in this sentence, particularly with this Kalivemba extension, Bhagavan summarizes his whole teaching. What is the goal we are seeking? It is the mind. The whole sentence is ondi uλλam siddhamāy yuḻporuḻai tērndu iruttal siddhi. The mind merging, being, knowing the substance which exists as accomplished, is siddhi, or is accomplishment. So what this additional adverbial clause implies is that the means for us to know the substance, namely our real nature, and thereby be as we actually are, is for the mind to subside and merge back into its source, which is that substance. And how did the mind subside? By turning inwards to face itself alone. In a couple of places in Day by Day, it's recorded that when Bhagavan was asked, what is the difference between mind and our real nature? Bhagavan said, when the mind faces out, when we face outwards towards other things, that is mind. when the same we turn within and face ourselves alone, that is our real nature. The mind is the false awareness, but is aware firstly of itself as I am this body, and secondly, but is aware of other things. That is the nature of mind or ego. Whereas our real nature is pure awareness, awareness that is aware of nothing other than itself. So when we turn our attention back to face ourselves alone, we cease to be aware of anything other than ourselves. We thereby remain as pure awareness, and the mind thereby subsides back into its source, which is pure awareness, and we remain as that. So this is a very important definition Bhagavan gives here. What is actually true spiritual accomplishment? What is true siddhi? Then in the next sentence he says, piṟa siddhi elām, soppaṇamār siddhigaḻ-ē. Piṟa siddhi elām means all other accomplishments are soppaṇamār siddhigaḻ-ē, are just accomplishments achieved in a dream. Why does he say there's accomplishments achieved in a dream? Because according to Bhagavan, our whole waking life is nothing but a dream. So if supposing we have ambition to have all sorts of supernatural paranormal powers, to be able to do magic, produce vibhuti out of the air, or all sorts of wonderful things that these siddhas are supposed to be able to do. Supposing we do some form of yoga and gain such powers, how real are they? They are simply, it's just like in a dream. If we can fly, that's very nice in a dream. It's nice to fly in a dream, but is it a real accomplishment? When we wake up, we know it was just a dream. It had no reality. So Bhagavan said, whatever, and if we accomplish anything else, whether it's supernatural powers or any type of worldly accomplishment or so-called spiritual accomplishment, whatever it may be, any accomplishment other than just knowing and being what we actually are, is just like is an accomplishment achieved in a dream. In other words, Bhagavan dismisses all types of accomplishments, whether worldly accomplishments or yogic accomplishments or any type of accomplishment other than just being as we actually are. All are just accomplishments achieved in a dream. So they are of no value whatsoever. And then in the third sentence, he asks a rhetorical question. Niddiraiviṭ ōrndāl. That means if one wakes up leaving sleep, lavaimeyyō, are they real? That's all that we achieve in whatever we may achieve in a dream. In a dream, I may become prime minister or president or king, or I may be a billionaire, or I may be a brilliant scientist, or whatever I may achieve in a dream. When I wake up, it's all of no value at all. I may be the richest man in the world in a dream, but when I wake up, I'm a pauper. So it's whatever we may accomplish in a dream is of no value. According to Bhagavan, our whole life is just a dream. So whatever we may accomplish in this dream is of no value. It's not real. It's just a passing show, just a fleeting dream. But what is real is only poruḻai, only the true substance, which is what we actually are. So only knowing and being that is the true accomplishment. Any other accomplishment is just an accomplishment experienced in a dream. It's not real at all. When he asks here, lavaimeyyō, it's a question, but obviously it's a rhetorical question. The implication is they are not real. So according to Bhagavan, no other siddhis, whatever we may, some people have ambition, they think they can do great good to the world if they gain divine powers, and they can put an end to all the injustices in the world, and they can bring in righteousness, and they may have so many dreams, and I mean they may have so many ambitions of what they can do if they get supernatural powers. Bhagavan just says it's just like anything you may achieve, any great accomplishment you may achieve in a dream. It has no reality whatsoever. And then Bhagavan ends this verse with a single word, tēr. Tēr is the root of the verb. But often in Tamil, the root can be used as an imperative. So here it's used as an imperative. Know. Know what? Know the implication is know what you actually are. In the Kalivemba version, Bhagavan extended this final sentence, tēr, which is, as I say, it's an imperative. He changed tēr into an adverbial participle, tērndu, which means knowing. And he added two more words, iruni. Iru means be, as it's an imperative. Well, it's the root of a verb acting as an imperative in this context. Iruni means you, be you. So tērndu iruni literally means knowing be you. But it implies in this context, knowing what? Knowing the real substance he referred. These are the same verbs he used in the first sentence where he said, siddhamāy uḻļporuḻai, tērndu iruttal siddhi. Knowing that poruļ, knowing that poruļ is siddhi. So here he says, knowing, implying knowing that one real substance, be you. That means be you as you are. Be as you are. Just be. So Bhagavan clearly, as I say, Bhagavan clearly points out in this verse what is the real goal, the real spiritual accomplishment, what it is that we should be seeking. Seeking anything other than the state of just being, knowing what we actually are, is that seeking anything else is just a delusion, because nothing else is real. And whatever else we may accomplish, even if we become the prime minister or president of our country, even if we become the richest man in the world, even if we become the most learned person in the world, even if we become the most greatest philanthropist, whatever great and noble accomplishment we may achieve, it is just an accomplishment in a dream. It's not real. It's not worth seeking. The only thing that is worth seeking is to know and to be as we actually are. That is the implication of this verse.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So the word siddhi means supernatural powers, and also any achievement, right?
Any achievement, any accomplishment is a siddhi. The basic meaning is accomplishment or achievement, because people who take this world to be real, they take supernatural powers to be real, and so they think they are great achievement. You can do things that no one else can do. If you can fly, if you can be in two places at the same time, if you can make your body so that you can walk, pass through walls or whatever. I mean, all these, I don't know, people have all sorts of ideas of what is, or if you can walk across water or something. These are all worthless achievements.
But so that includes regular achievements too, like
also any achievement.
So he's talking about any achievement, right? Like
yes,
regular job or
yes,
having a dream to do,
yes,
be something,
yes,
or you know.
Bhagavan doesn't explicitly refer here to supernatural powers, because the word siddhi is generally associated with supernatural powers. He's implying supernatural powers, but he's not excluding any other type of achievement.
Yeah.
Any achievement is just an achievement in a dream.
So so all these achievements It's basically a dream.
Yes.
And so that could also be interpreted that why do anything, right, by some people. And that's kind of what like Krishna chides Arjun for, that he has to do his duty. So, and then he would go on explain that it has to be action in inaction. So could you explain this and reconcile these statements?
Bhagavan explained this very nicely in the note he wrote for his mother when she asked him to come home in December 1898, when his family came to know that he was living as a sadhu in Tiruvannāmalai. His mother and uncle, and maybe his brother, I can't remember who, some of the relatives accompanied his mother, and he was at that time living in Pavlakundru. There's a small shrine on top of a spur of Arunachala called Pavlakundru. In that small temple, Bhagavan was living there, and his mother came and she was pleading with him to come home to Madurai. And she said, you can continue the same life, you can continue your meditation or whatever it is you want to do, but at least you should be at home and you should allow me to be feeding you and taking care of you. Bhagavan was just sitting there keeping quiet without saying anything. Then the people who were there, seeing his mother weeping and Bhagavan seemingly being indifferent to her pleading, they felt sorry, and they thought maybe Bhagavan isn't saying anything because he's got a vow of silence. Bhagavan never had a vow of silence, but some people in those days, because Bhagavan didn't talk much or hardly at all, people thought he's observing some sort of mauna as some type of tapas he's doing. So they said, even if you don't want to answer in words, at least answer in writing. And they gave him a piece of paper and a pencil. So Bhagavan then wrote on that piece of paper, Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angang yirindu artuvipan. That means according to the prarabdha of each person. Literally, it means according to their prarabdha. It implies the destiny of each person. Adakanavan. Adakanavan literally means he who is for that. It is indirectly referring to God or to Guru, to the higher power that is ordaining the fruits of our karmas. Adakanavan angang yirindu. Being there means being in every place, implying he's in the heart of each and every individual. Angang yirindu atuvipan. Atuvipan means will make them dance. Like a puppet master makes a puppet dance, the Adakanavan, God, makes us dance. So supposing it is my destiny to become prime minister or to become a billionaire, I have to make effort for that. I have to stand for election. I have to get the votes and everything. All those actions that are necessary in order to become prime minister, he will make me do all those actions. So we don't have to worry about action. Bhagavan says, when in the 13th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, however much burden we throw on God, he bears all of it. When we know that the one supreme ruling power is driving all karyas, that means everything that is to be done, he is making them all happen. So when we know that, instead of yielding ourselves to that, the higher power, why should we suffer forever thinking it's necessary to do this, it's necessary to do that? Those actions which are to be done by our body, speech, and mind, in order for us to experience whatever is destined to happen, we'll be made to do those actions. As Bhagavan said in the next two sentences, what is not to happen will not happen however much effort one makes. What is to happen will not stop however much obstruction one tries to do. iduve tinnam, this is certain. Ādalin monamai irake nandru. Therefore, being silent is good, or silently being is good. So the actions which our body, speech, and mind are destined to do, they will be made to do. We can also, if I don't like what is destined to happen, I can try to avoid it. Or if I want something that is not destined to happen, I can try to achieve it. I often said we have the effort to want what is not destined. We have the effort to try for what is not destined. But we don't have any freedom to actually change what is destined. What will happen, will happen. What will not happen, will not happen. So it is, so long as we rise as ego, we have likes and dislikes. And our likes and dislikes impel us to try to avoid unpleasant things and to achieve pleasant things. But we can only achieve what we are destined to achieve. And we can only avoid what we are destined to avoid. We cannot actually change anything. So though we are free to want to change things and to try to change things, we are not free to change them. So we actually, if we surrender body, speech, and mind entirely to Bhagavan, I don't want anything. Ninishtam enishtam. Your will is my will. Imbedaku. That is happiness for me. I don't want anything else. That is our attitude of surrender. Whatever body, speech, and mind are destined to do, they'll be made to do. But we won't be interfering with our likes and dislikes, because we've surrendered all our likes and dislikes to Bhagavan. How to surrender all our likes and dislikes? We can to some extent reduce our likes and dislikes, but so long as we rise as ego, we can't avoid having, but naturally we dislike unpleasant things and we like pleasant things. So likes and dislikes, desires, attachment, that is the very nature of ego. We can weaken our desires and attachments, our likes and dislikes, so they're not too strong, but we cannot get rid of them entirely without getting rid of their root. The root of all likes, dislikes, and so on is only ego, the one who has the likes and dislikes. So it is only by surrendering this ego entirely that we can truly surrender all our will to Bhagavan. We must not only, in order to surrender the will, we must surrender the one who has the will. And how to surrender this ego? Bhagavan says in the first sentence of that same paragraph, Anma chintane tabira, vera chintane kalambavataku satram idam kadamo, without giving the slightest room for the rising of any thought other than Atma Chintana. Atma Chintana literally means thought of oneself, but in this context it implies self-attentiveness. So not attending to anything other than oneself, not thinking of anything other than oneself, and thereby Atmanishta Paranai Irupate, being one who is firmly established in oneself, Tanne Isanuku Alipadam, that is giving oneself to God. Because what Bhagavan says in that sentence is very, very important, and it's explained by one of the fundamental principles of his teaching, possibly the most important principle of his teaching. The nature of ego is to rise and flourish by being aware of things other than itself. If the ego tries to be aware of itself alone, it subsides. So the way to make ego, the way to surrender ego is to attend to ourself alone. This principle is what is implied by Bhagavan in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. Urupatri undam, grasping form, it rises. Urupatri nekam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mikaongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. What does he mean here by grasping form? And what is the subject? The subject, he says in the last line, Urupatra peya hande, a formless phantom ego. So how can this formless phantom ego grasp forms? What he means by grasping form is being aware of things other than ourselves. Ego has no form of its own. Though it grasps the form of a body as I, this body is not ego. This mind is not. The ego is just that which is aware of this body as I. Ego is not the body, but that which is aware of the body as I. So it comes into existence by grasping form. That means by being aware of a body as itself. It stands by grasping form, and it feeds itself and flourishes by grasping form. Grasping form means being aware of anything other than itself, being aware of any phenomena. Form here means any phenomena. All phenomena are forms of one kind or another, and all forms are phenomena. So being aware of phenomena is the food which feeds and nourishes the ego. So if we try to turn our attention back to face ourselves alone, we are turning our back on all phenomena, thoughts, everything that appears and disappears. We're turning away from, back towards ourselves. That will bring about the subsidence of the ego, and that alone is true surrender. That is what Bhagavan refers to in this verse, in the first of the Kalivembra extensions for this verse, on the uḷḷadu, the mind merging. That means the mind merging back into the source from which it arose. What is the source from which we arose as ego or mind? It is our real nature, the pure awareness that we actually are. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Any questions?
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
First, I would like to wish you Merry Christmas in advance.
Okay, and same to you, same to all of you.
Michael, I have two questions. First, to follow up Kumar's question regarding the prarabdha karma. You just said that we have the freedom to try to change something.
Yes.
But we cannot change what's going to happen.
Yes.
So does that mean that we have the freedom to do any actions to change in order to try to change something which are not determined or predetermined by God?
Yes. There are two forces. The actions of the instruments of action are mind, speech, and body. There are two forces driving mind, speech, and body. One is prarabdha. What the certain actions the mind, speech, and body are destined to do. So you cannot avoid that. If you are destined to become a professor of philosophy, say, you have to study for so many years, you have to get an undergraduate degree, then you have to get a master's degree, then you have to get a PhD, then you have to get a job in a university, and first you'll be a junior lecturer, and eventually you'll raise up and become a professor. There's so many things you have to do in order to achieve that. That is destined. You will be made to do all those things. But most things that we achieve in life, we also want to achieve. It's my destiny to become a professor of philosophy. I also want to become a professor of philosophy. So but the actions that are necessary to become a professor of philosophy are driven both by my destiny and by my will. There are other things, but if I'm destined to have an accident on the road, I will decide, okay, now I'll go out for a walk, and I'll think I can cross the road before the cars come, but one car comes, or a motorcycle comes around the car and hits me, and I have the accident. Because I was destined to have that accident, I had to make that decision to go out for a walk and to cross the road at that particular time. That's not what I want, but it's destined to happen. So some things some of our actions are driven only by destiny. Afterwards, we think, what a fool I was. Why should I have chosen to cross the road at that moment? I know that these motorcycles come very fast and you can't always see them. So it was foolhardy of me to cross the road. But because it was my destiny, I couldn't avoid making that decision at that moment. Even though I may be usually very careful in crossing the road. But at that moment, because I'm destined to have that accident, I'll be rash. So some actions are driven only by destiny. Some are driven by a mixture of destiny and will. And some are driven only by will. I want to become a professor of philosophy, so I study very hard. But I fail the exams because I'm not destined to. And I sit the exams again and still I fail, or I don't get a good enough pass. Or I go for an interview, I don't get selected for a job. So I can try to become a professor of philosophy as hard as I like. If it's not my destiny, it's not going to happen. So some actions are driven only by will. Some actions are driven only by destiny. Some are driven by destiny and will happen to be working hand in hand. But whatever happens, that is destiny. Whatever is not in our destiny, we cannot achieve it. We cannot experience it.
So if everything has been predetermined,
yes,
evil or good, so what do you say about what happened or what Hitler did? You know, he murdered millions of people. So do you think that also predetermined by God, that those people had to die?
It is predetermined, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't exonerate Hitler. Because Hitler, why he, okay, was his destiny to become the Chancellor of Germany and have the power to do all those things. That is all according to destiny. But he had that hatred of Jews. That hatred is, that is not, to have that hatred is not his destiny. That's his will. Bhagavan says in verse 19 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan says, vidimati vellam vivadam. Wait a second, I'll just get the verse. Vidimati moolam vivekamilakai, vidimati vellam vivadam. That is, only for those who don't know the root of fate and free will argue about which prevails, fate or free will. The reason Bhagavan says this is this argument about which will prevail, fate or will. This argument is only for those who don't know the truth of them, who don't know the root of them. The root of them is ego. And will cannot rule over fate and fate cannot rule over will, because each have their own domain. The president of Pakistan has no right to say what happens in India. The president of India or the prime minister of India has no right to say what happens in Pakistan. They're two separate domains. So each is the supreme power within their own domain, but they cannot encroach on the other domain. Likewise, fate and will. Nothing on earth can make you want what you do not want, or make you not want what you do want. So your destiny cannot obstruct your will. It may be your destiny to be a pauper. That doesn't stop you wanting to be a billionaire. Likewise, if it's your destiny to be a pauper, however much you want to be a billionaire, you can never be anything but a pauper. So fate and the destiny controls all that happens. will is what we want to happen. These are two distinct domains. Destiny cannot make us want anything that we do not want. Our will cannot make us experience anything that we are not destined to experience.
Because in Day by Day book, I read that it is said that Bhagavan is said to have said even all the actions down to the minutest action, like putting a fan on the floor, is already predetermined by God. So that means that all actions that we make are predetermined by God. So what freedom do we have?
Okay. People didn't talk. Bhagavan, this is a very subtle point. People don't always understand this properly. So people often misunderstood what Bhagavan was saying. What Bhagavan said is, what is destined to, the actions that you're destined to do, you'll be made to do. That doesn't mean that all the actions you do are what you're destined to do. You can say you can say all Sikhs have beards, but that doesn't mean all people who have beards are Sikhs. So when Bhagavan says all actions, all that is destined to be done will be done, he's not saying that all that is done is destined to be done. Because if all actions were predetermined, then there would be no scope for us to create fresh karma. Otherwise, if what we are destined to do produces fruit, then we have no freedom at all. I'm now suffering because of the bad things I did in the past, but the bad things I did in the past were my destiny. So then there's no justice at all. The whole karma theory is based on the fact that we do have the freedom to want to do things and to try to do things. But whatever we do by our will in this life will not bear fruit in this life. Because what we are destined to experience in this life, that alone we will experience. We cannot avoid it. So, but many people don't understand this subtle distinction, and so they misunderstood what Bhagavan said. They thought Bhagavan said, but all actions are predetermined. What he said is all predetermined actions will happen, but not necessarily that everything that you do is predetermined.
So, so K was actions here, or from what I'm inferring is of two types. One is those which are predetermined, and the other is those which are out of his free will, but not necessarily predetermined.
Yes, but there's often an overlap, because as I said, if it's your destiny to become a professor and you want to become a professor,
that's going to happen.
The actions you make in order to become a professor are being driven both by your destiny and by your will.
Right.
That's why we cannot easily distinguish which actions are according to destiny, which are according to our will, because they're so intermingled.
Well, we won't be able to distinguish that. We won't know that, right?
And we don't need to know that.
Right.
All we need to know is what causes us to do agamya, our desires, our likes, dislikes, and so on. If we want to avoid doing agamya, we don't have to think, is this action agamya or is it prarabdha? Simply don't have any will. Surrender your will to Bhagavan, and all your actions will then be according to prarabdha. But you won't be doing any action according to your will. But so long as you have a will, so long as you have likes, dislikes, and so on, you will inevitably be doing agamya. You cannot avoid it. And we cannot avoid having likes and dislikes, at least to some extent.
The will you have in this life can carry forward to the next life as predetermined.
What is that? The will?
The will you do this life will carry forward
The will of the
to the
action.
next life as predetermined.
Not necessarily the next life. Whatever you do in this life, according to your will, that is called agamya. All agamya bears fruit. The fruit gets stored in sanchita. Sanchita means a heap or pile of a store of all the fruits of past action. In every lifetime, supposing you have, in a lifetime you experience 1 million units of prarabdha, you will accumulate 10 million units of fresh fruit, because we always want to achieve so much more than we can achieve in life. I want to be an astronaut and fly to Mars. I want to be a president. I want to be a rich man. I want to be a concert pianist. I can have so many desires, but I can't do them all. So generally, we have many more desires than what we can actually experience. So unless we have to a very, very great extent have surrendered, unless to a very great extent we have surrendered our will, we will be doing more agamya than we are exhausting prarabdha. So the sanchita is a vast store that is ever getting bigger and bigger and bigger. From that vast store, Bhagavan selects which fruit of which past actions will be most favorable to our spiritual development. Those he selects and allots as our prarabdha. So prarabdha is only a small selection of a vast heap of the fruit of past actions that haven't yet been experienced.
So, whatever you did in this birth, you said will be predetermined.
Will get accumulated to the sanchita.
Yes, and then but what Michael is correcting is it just won't all manifest in the next birth, but in
some part of
births.
that
Exactly. It could take maybe.
And not necessarily, but I mean, we can never experience all the fruits of our past karmas. Sooner or later, we'll be tired of this and we'll want to surrender ourselves. When we surrender ourselves, when ego is annihilated, there's no one left to experience any. So there may be a heap of unexperienced fruits waiting in the sanchita. It all gets destroyed when ego is destroyed. That's why Bhagavan said, if a man has 3 wives and dies, all 3 wives become widows. So our sanchita, our agamya, prarabdha, and sanchita all get nullified when ego is destroyed, because there's no one left to experience them.
Okay, Michael, you just say that the part of the karma chosen by God for spiritual development for that person.
Yes.
So what do you say about those baby who were born and then die? So what kind of spiritual development does that baby have?
Like
we cannot
immediately after birth.
Yeah, we cannot understand all these things. Why God does what he does, all we can know is what is God? God is nothing but our own real nature. And our real nature, we all, as Bhagavan said, our very nature is to love ourselves. There's not a single creature in this world that does not love itself. So we all love ourselves. So self-love is our very nature. So we have because our real nature is infinite love. We all love to be as we actually are. That love is manifested. The love that our real nature has for itself, as it actually is, manifests as God and God's grace. So God's grace is the love that we have for our own real nature. But because we've now limited ourselves as a person, we no longer experience our love as infinite. Our love is divided. I like this person that I seem to be. I also like my mother, my father, my wife, my husband, my children. I like my job. I like my friends, I dislike these people. Our love gets scattered among so many things, and it takes on the opposite form. The opposite of like is dislike. All those pairs of opposites come into existence when we rise as ego. So as ego, our love is very fragmented. But behind all this fragmented love, I love watching football matches, or I love watching cricket matches, or I love going to cinema. I love my friends. I love this. I love so many things we have like for in this world. Behind all these likings, there's one fundamental liking. Why do I like football? Because watching football makes me happy, or it seems to make me happy. Why do I like reading books on philosophy? Because reading books on philosophy makes me feel happy. Whatever we like, whatever we desire, underlying that desire is the desire to be happy. We like whatever we think is going to make us happy. So that liking for happiness, that is our real nature. So that liking for happiness is what impels us to do all actions. What impels us to take birth again and again. Taking birth again and again means dreaming one dream after another. That's all driven by our fundamental desire for happiness. The problem is we are looking for happiness in the wrong places, because we think I support such and such a football team. So if I go and watch my football team, and my football team wins, I'll be happy. Me and my friends will all go out and have a good drink, and we'll have a jolly good time, and we'll be happy. If our team loses, then we all feel miserable. We think that because we have a desire for our team to win, we're happy when it does win. When it doesn't win, we feel miserable. So all this is, it's all, we're looking for happiness in the wrong place, because it's not really what makes me happy is not the fact that my team wins, but because my desire for my team to win is fulfilled, that desire is satisfied. So I feel I'm relieved of that desire for a while. The desire is satisfied. That's what makes me happy. So then next Saturday, when my team is playing again, I want to go again. But next time they lose, and I feel miserable because what I desire is not fulfilled. So we are looking for happiness in the wrong places. We're looking for happiness outside ourselves. Whereas according to Bhagavan, there's no happiness at all in any of the things of the world. Happiness is our real nature. It lies within us. So eventually we come to understand the nature of the mind is the nature of desire. The desire is never satisfied. Because even if my football team wins this Saturday, I want them to win next Saturday also. And I want them to win the World Cup or whatever. But even if my team win the World Cup this year, what about next year? I want them to win next year. I want them to win the next year. So the desire, there's no end to desire. If we're looking for happiness outside ourselves, desire is endless, because we cannot get infinite satisfaction from anything. All the satisfaction, all the happiness we achieve from it, we seem to achieve from external things, it's all finite, it's all fleeting. None of it lasts. So when we understand this is the nature of desire, then we begin questioning, why to desire all these things? Who am I who desires all these things? Then we begin to seek the happiness. We're all seeking happiness, but instead of seeking it in the wrong places, we begin to seek it within, where it actually lies. So it is desire for happiness is behind all our actions. So that desire for happiness is it is the very nature of ego, is to desire happiness, because happiness is our real nature. And the love for our real nature is also our real nature. So that love that our real nature has for itself, because our real nature doesn't see us as anything other than itself, it loves us as itself, so it wants us to be as itself. So that is grace. Grace is nothing but the love that we as we actually are have for ourselves as we actually are. So that love, that grace is always drawing us, is always finding ways to draw us back within. So whatever it is grace, but allots our destiny. So maybe there's some fruit of some action need to be quickly finished off. So we're born as a baby, we die next day or 2 weeks later or something. It's just a very brief dream. But in that dream, for some reason that experience was given, and we're born again. What is birth after all? What is death? It's just a dream. We dream that we were born. None of us remember being born, but because we believe what everyone else in this dream tells us, we believe that on such and such a day, in such a year, we were born. And if we ask our mother, she says, yes, you were born on that such and such a day. So we believe in our birth. And we believe one day we're going to die. But we never actually experience our death. 1 minute we're alive, and next minute we're dead. So 1 minute we're dreaming, next minute the dream comes to an end. So our whole life is nothing but a dream. And there's one dream after another dream after another dream. So long as we rise as ego and seek happiness outside ourselves, the dreams will be endless. The dreams are nothing but a projection of our own desires. Our own likes, dislikes, hopes, fears are all projected outside of this world.
So the dreams are also the different births.
Hmm?
Different births that the soul would take.
Yeah. Every so-called life is a dream.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. And in a dream, we never know when the dream started, because when we're dreaming, we seem to be awake. So it seems to us in our dream that we have memories going back to our childhood.
Right.
Though the dream has only been going on for a few minutes, we have memories going back to childhood. So it seems that the dream began long ago, even though it actually began only a few minutes ago.
Right.
Hi, Michael.
Right.
So you said Dhamishtam Manishtam, thy will be done, right? So
Yeah.
how do we know what God's will is? How do we?
God's will is for you to be happy. People think whether should I do this or should I do that? Is this God's will or that God's will? What you should do, God wills that you have no desire at all. So my will is your will, means I give up all my desires, all my likes and dislikes. Whatever happens, accept that as your will. If we have no desires, no likes or dislikes, we will happily accept whatever happens. Certain things in life we consider pleasant, certain things we consider unpleasant. The pleasant things are the things we like, and the unpleasant things are the things we dislike. If we had no likes or dislikes, we would be unmoved by anything. It may seem to others that we're undergoing a very unpleasant experience. We may be suffering from cancer. We may be on our deathbed being given chemotherapy and only a few weeks to live or whatever. In the eyes of other people, that seems to be a very great suffering. But if we accept it's all Bhagavan's will, it's all for my own good, we're unaffected by it. The cause of all suffering is not what we experience, but our likes and dislikes. To take an extreme example, why do we all think that war is bad? Because we wouldn't want to be caught up in a war and being bombed and being injured. So we don't like to see other people caught up in a war and being bombed and injured. But if we had no likes or dislikes, what is the difference between war and peace? So the problem is our own likes and dislikes. But even the likes and dislikes are not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is ego, the one who has the likes and dislikes. And it's the very nature of ego to have likes and dislikes. So if we want to completely surrender our will to the will of God, we have to surrender ego. So God's will is that you have no will at all, other than just to be as you are.
So in other words, you're saying that we dislike, we don't like Hitler because he did bad things, but that's just a judgment. And we like Jesus because he showed the path to salvation. But if those judgments are not there, then it is as is. There's no good or bad. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, ultimately, good and bad is determined by our own likes and dislikes. But because we are not able to live without likes and dislikes, we all naturally judge certain things as good and certain things as bad. That's unavoidable so long as we rise as ego. So I'm not saying this to justify what Hitler does or to justify any war. I'm just saying what makes us like, take cancer, for example. Does anyone want cancer? Nobody wants cancer. So we think cancer is bad. But if cancer comes to us, if we accept it as the sweet will of Bhagavan, okay, I'm going to die in a few weeks. Okay, let me just think of him and pray to him, meditate on him. And we can be perfectly happy in spite of having cancer. So the whole problem lies in our likes and dislikes. So surrendering our will, we do know what the will of God is. The will of God is that we just just be. Don't rise as ego. Don't have likes and dislikes. Don't have an individual will. Because why God doesn't want us to have an individual will? Because our individual will is what creates all the problems for us.
What if the whole world is Sumayru?
Sorry?
Question is, what if the whole world is Sumayr?
What is Sumayru?
Sumayr means just
be.
Just be.
Just be. If the whole world, well, it's not the world that needs to just be, it's we who need to just be.
That's true.
The problem is not the world.
Yeah.
The problem is, the dream is not the problem. The dreamer is the problem.
Yeah.
The dreamer complains about the dream and says, oh, this dream is giving me so much trouble. In my dream, there's famine, there's wars, there's natural disasters. There's so many troubles in my dream. The dream is not the problem. Stop dreaming, then there's no problem. So the dreamer is the problem. So it's not the world that has to just be, it's we just have to be.
This might be more of a, the question is, since we are talking about karma and last birth, so what, in your opinion, in the first birth, there was no destiny. I mean, there was no actions, there was nothing. So we just somehow went through the process in the first birth. I suppose that for me personally, again, fortifies the statement that everything is predestined, because first birth, we didn't have any reaction to go through.
I think it's a dream.
For whom was the first birth? I'm asking a question. For whom was the first birth?
It's for this.
For ego.
Yeah,
for the same ego for whom there is this birth. So how this birth all started, it started with the rising of ego. So we need to focus on the root of it. The root is ego. If we investigate this ego, we will find there's no such thing. There never was an ego. So there never was any birth or any death. You are assuming there's a first birth. if we are born now, then logically there must have been a first birth. But are we actually born now?
That itself is fake.
So this karma theory, we are taught the karma theory for a reason. It is not to go into, I mean, any theory, any philosophy, you can question it till everything you can reduce back to absurdity. What that is not the purpose of the karma theory. Why Bhagavan taught us the karma theory, we can understand it very well by thinking carefully about the note he wrote to his mother. What we are destined to do, we'll be made to do. But we have no responsibility. We may feel, I've got a family, I've got to work and feed my family and everything. That is not your responsibility. If your family is to be fed, your body and mind will be made to do the work in order to feed them. So we don't have to worry about action. The purpose of the karma theory is to make us understand we need not concern ourselves with action. What we are destined to do will be made to do. And we need not want to do anything else. If we want to do anything else, that's where the problem comes in. So the whole purpose of the karma theory is to help us to separate ourselves from karmas. To make us understand there's no point in making effort to achieve this or that in the world. Because the only true achievement, the only thing that we can really achieve by our will is our own surrender. That is the true achievement. What Bhagavan described in the first sentence of this verse, being knowing the reality, that's a description of the state of surrender. Because when we surrender ourselves completely, we cease rising as ego. When there's no rising as ego, there's just being. The karma theory, if we start extrapolating, it's leading us nowhere. It has a purpose. The purpose of the karma theory is to make us understand we need not concern ourselves with karma. Karma will take care of itself. We need concern ourselves with only one thing, that is surrendering ourselves.
Sadhuvam Swami will say, I think he says somewhere, all theories other than Atma Vichara are going to have some hole or other.
Yes.
Atma Vichara is the only perfect thing.
It's the closest to a perfect theory, but even that has a hole. Because who is to do the Atma Vichara? Ego. Ego is to investigate itself. If ego investigates itself, there's no ego, so there never was any Atma Vichara.
So I guess, Michael, what I was asking is if you, for example, if your prarabdha, like you said, is to become a doctor,
yes,
or make a company, for example, it's a process. It takes a long time.
Yes.
So during this process, for example, if you're in it for a year, do you keep on going in the process, or do you give up the process? I mean, how do you know that you're in the
if you are
right
destined
process?
to become a doctor, you will be made to go through that process.
The whole process from start to finish.
It's your destiny to be a doctor. If it's your destiny to be a medical student dropout, you'll study medicine for 4 years and you won't complete the 5th year. So whatever is to happen will happen. But that need not concern us. We know everything that happened in the past, we know that was destined to happen. We don't know what's going to happen the next day. We don't know what's going to happen the next minute. But we need not concern ourselves with these things because it's already laid out. The only thing we need to be concerned about is knowing and being what we actually are, by turning our attention within and thereby surrendering ourselves. That is all we need to be concerned about. The karma theory is taught to us to make us understand that we need not be concerned about karma. But people ask endless questions about the karma theory. But it's something fascinating. We don't fully understand it. We can't understand it fully. So it's a very interesting subject to ask endless questions about and have endless arguments about. When Bhagavan talks about putting the fan down, did he mean that all actions are destined or some actions are not destined? People have endless arguments about these things. The whole purpose of Bhagavan's teachings is to make us unconcerned with all these things, to make us understand the only thing we need to be concerned about is knowing and being what we actually are.
Just be.
And they still go back.
Knowing and being that poruḻ, that real substance, that alone is the achievement. That alone is siddhi. Anything else, even if you become an expert in the karma theory or an expert in any type of philosophy, that's just an achievement in a dream. So no achievement is real except surrender, complete surrender, knowing and being what you actually are. So Bhagavan's teachings, if you go through verse by verse by verse, in so many different ways he's bringing home the same message. Don't be concerned about anything except knowing and being what you actually are.
That's the sum of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Michael, another question.
Yes.
Okay. He can see you.
You can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The audience can see you too, no?
I'm back again. One last question.
Nature of ego, it comes back again and again and again until we get tired of it.
One last question, Michael.
Yes.
In that same book, The Day by Day with Bhagavan,
Yes.
it's also said that there was a questioner who was asking Bhagavan about the difference between meditations refers to this Raja Yoga and Atma Vichara.
Yes.
And then it is said in there that Bhagavan replied is saying that the goal of these two are actually the same, which is self-realization.
Yes.
Only the method is different. One is Atma Vichara is focusing on the subject who's doing the meditations, and the Raja Yoga focus on the objects of the meditations. But they eventually will lead to the same goal. Now, I want to hear from you, your opinion about that. Is that true, or is that an inaccurate translation of the Bhagavan saying?
But we don't know what Bhagavan actually said, and we don't know why he said it. Bhagavan, often people who came to Bhagavan and asked questions, they were not all willing to accept Bhagavan's teachings as they are. So he would say things that would encourage them at their own level. It is true that the goal of all spiritual paths is the same. In fact, the goal of all efforts are the same. The ultimate goal, we may spend our life seeking worldly pleasures, but ultimately, the ultimate aim, what we are all seeking is happiness. But so long as we're seeking the happiness outside ourselves, our efforts are going to be frustrated and we're going to be disappointed. In meditation, if you're simply meditating, what is important in meditation is what is your motive. Supposing you are meditating with an aim to acquire some supernatural powers. That is not going to purify your mind. But supposing you're meditating with love for God because you want to surrender yourself to God, you want to increase your love for God, so you meditate on God with love. That will purify your mind, because instead of your mind dwelling on other things that you could desire, you're dwelling on God. So you're focusing all your desire, all your love on God alone. I don't want anything except God. So to that extent, your mind is being purified. But you're still, because you take God to be something other than yourself, your attention is still going outwards. So sooner or later, God has to appear to you as Guru and tell you the God you are seeking is not outside, that God is within you. So meditation, if the meditation is such a meditation that will purify the mind, it will thereby lead to Atma-vichara, which will lead to a goal. The Ganga is the main river. There's a tributary that flows into the Ganga called Yamuna. Both have the same goal. Both eventually reach the ocean. But in order for the Yamuna to reach the ocean, it has to merge with the Ganga, because Ganga is the main river. So in order for any other spiritual path to reach its destination, it has to merge with Atma-vichara. Because Atma-vichara, so long as we're facing outwards, we cannot know ourselves. Sooner or later, but our goal is to know ourselves, to know what is real. What is real is only you. So you need to know yourself in order to attain the final goal. So you have to turn your attention within sooner or later. So other types of meditation, not all types of meditation, because I say if you're meditating in order to gain supernatural powers, that's not going to purify your mind. But if you're doing it for the purification of the mind, if you're doing it out of love for God, that will purify your mind and will enable you to understand that the only way to know God is to turn your attention within. Does that answer your question adequately?
Yeah, so are you saying that any methods, any practice, any sadhana who do not incorporate Atma-vichara in the practice will never take them to the self-realization?
Yes, yes. But it's not even a matter of incorporating Atma-vichara. Ultimately, we have to come to Atma-vichara, which means we have to leave all other practices. Because all other practices are directing our attention outwards, in the opposite direction. We may be meditating on God with great love. That will purify our mind, but still we're taking God to be something other than ourselves. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 8 of Upadesha, Anya bhavatin avanahamahum, ananya bhava undi para, anatimum utamum undi para. Anya bhava means meditation on what is other. In the context, it means meditating on God as if he is something other than ourselves. So rather than meditating on God as something other than ourselves, meditating on him as ourselves with the conviction he is I, that is the best of all. So when we meditate on God as ourselves, what does that mean? We meditate on ourselves. That is Atma-vichara. So Bhagavan says that is the best of all. So all other spiritual practices ultimately have to lead to this. And once we come to this path, no other spiritual practice is necessary. Because we're on the direct road home.
So those who practice Raja Yoga, like Patanjali Yoga, if they don't practice Atma-vichara in their meditation, they will never realize the self then.
Ultimately, this Raja Yoga is a rather, people are of different temperaments. So for people with a very strong sense of doership, who want to do something, they're given Raja Yoga. Do this pranayama, do this meditation, do this dharana, where they have so many different stages and steps. And I mean, it's a very complicated Raja Yoga. But this is very good for people who have a very strong sense of doership. But eventually, they have to be taught, after doing all these mental gymnastics, whatever it is they do in Raja Yoga, sooner or later they have to be taught what you are seeking lies within you. Come within. So ultimately we have to come back to this path. Bhagavan compared Raja Yoga and Atma-vichara using an analogy. Supposing a cow is tied in its shed. So long as it's in its shed, that's where it belongs. But somehow it breaks loose and it comes out of the shed. And it goes looking for the greenest patches of grass to eat. Your job is now to get that cow back into the shed. There are two approaches you can take. You can either take a stick and go chasing after the cow, trying to chase it back into the shed. That is not a very efficient way of doing it, because even if you manage to chase the cow in the direction of the shed, as soon as it sees the shed, it's going to veer off in some other direction. So you're going to get yourself exhausted running after the cow. Sooner or later, you'll understand, oh, this running after a cow with a stick is not working. Then you have to be a little bit smarter. So how do you get, what is the cow going looking for? It's going looking for nice green grass. So take a nice bunch of green grass and tempt the cow. Slowly, slowly tempt it. If you want to leave that is spread green grass along the path, and it follows the green grass eating it, eventually it comes into the shed. That's a very easy way, very smart way also. One said, Raja Yoga is like running after the cow with a stick. Atma-vichara is like tempting it with green grass. So this is the smart way, and also the easiest way, and the most pleasant way also. You don't get exhausted running after the cow.
All right, thank you, Michael.
But for some people, they say, no, I have to do. So for them, running after a cow for a while is necessary. When they're finally tired of running after a cow, then they will listen to sense and understand, oh yes, this Atma-vichara is much more, makes much more sense.
And he says,
That isn't to say that it's a wrong path. It's necessary for certain type of people. It's necessary to follow that path until they understand, until they come to understand that all their efforts come to naught. Then only they will be, until we've tried our best, doing all that we can to be happy. When we find all our efforts go in vain, end in disappointment, then only we'll be willing to surrender ourselves. So all spiritual paths, they have their place. They're suitable for different people at different stages of spiritual development. But ultimately, the only solution is complete surrender. And how to surrender ourselves? By turning our attention back within.
so he says in Nanya, right? Like in the second paragraph, I believe, jnana vichara, ōrndāl, jnana vichara alone is the principal means.
Yeah, the end of the first paragraph.
Yeah, end of the first paragraph. At the end of the day, that's only way.
Yeah.
So whenever the mind turns outward, we should treat that as a fresh instance, not get bothered about what happened in the past, and bring it back again.
Again and again and again.
That keeps happening again and again and again. And sometimes you may get a question if this is actually working or not. But every instance we should attack it as if it's a fresh instance.
Yes, yes, yes. When a small child is learning to walk, it falls over many times. But however many times it falls over, it gets up and tries again. If it didn't get up and try again, it would never learn to walk. So it's exactly the same on this spiritual path. We will fall so many times because our desires and attachments are so strong, our attention keeps on jumping outwards. But slowly, 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 we have to turn it back within, turn it, turn it, turn it. But one said, what's it matter however many thoughts arise? As and when each thought arises, investigate to whom, it will be clear to me. So that means we have to be constantly, however many times our attention is distracted by other things, we have to turn it back to face ourselves.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Michael, last question. So you just said that you can trick the cow by using the grass that he's going after,
Yes.
and then luring him in.
Yes.
So that really piqued my interest. Like, how can I use that analogy directly in my practices so that I can enjoy this practice more than anything else, so that I go back, go in the right direction all the time.
So long as we are directing our attention outwards, away from ourselves, we are disturbing our inner peace. But what we all want ultimately is just to be peaceful. Peace is happiness. When there's no agitation, there's perfect satisfaction. So it is the satisfaction of just letting go of everything. Bhagavan, when he describes in the 13th paragraph of Nana, when he's describing, he says, after saying, since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, one supreme ruling power, one power of God is driving all karyas, whatever needs to be done, instead of we also yielding to it, why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do this, it's necessary to do that? Then after that he gives an analogy. Though we know that the train is bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily, leaving our small luggage placed on it, suffer bearing it on our head? Two key words in that sentence are sukhamāy. Sukhamāy means happily. Happily leaving our luggage on the train. He contrasts that with Ain kashtapadavendam. Why suffer bearing it on our head? By carrying our burden, we are unnecessarily suffering. If we want to be free of suffering, put aside the burden. There is no path so pleasant as the path of surrender. Because in the path of surrender, we are letting go. And how to let go of everything else? Hold on to yourself. Because the very nature of ego is grasping. Ego won't remain for a moment without grasping. So instead of grasping anything else, grasp yourself. That's a way to let go of everything. This is not only the easiest path, this is the most pleasant path. Because it's the path of letting go, the path of surrendering. So Bhagavan doesn't ask us to do anything. He asks us to stop doing anything. Surrender. But how to stop doing? Doing is the very nature of the mind. The mind is constantly doing. The key to stopping doing is to turn within and attend only to ourselves. Then mind, ego, everything subsides. And what remains is the state of just being. And that is siddhi. That is the real accomplishment. Just being as you are, knowing what you are. That is accomplishment. That is the real accomplishment. And that is the fruit of complete surrender. And that is the state of supreme happiness, infinite satisfaction. So the more we follow Bhagavan's path, the more we understand this is a very, very pleasant path Bhagavan has given us.
I suppose
Nice. Tempting the cow back to the shed, it's nice because we're pleasing the cow, we're pleasing ourselves, we're all happy.
Very nice.
I suppose since you have been in the path for a very long time, I'm very sure that you're able to experience all that happiness on a very regular basis. I appreciate it.
All I know, I don't say I'm any happier than anyone else, but all I know from experience, the more we surrender to Bhagavan, the more we let go of things, the more we remain indifferent, the more we are unconcerned about whatever happens, the more pleasant and peaceful our life is. But so long as we allow our attention to go outwards, we'll be concerned about things. If we look at the world, so many things are happening in the world. We have a great climate catastrophe. we are ruining the very environment on which we depend for our survival. And we have our politicians, we have got Trump, and we've got this Brexit, so many things happen, and we've got Putin there, and we've got, anywhere you look in the world, what sort of leaders we have in the world now. I don't know if any country nowadays has a good leader. But the world well, the world has always been going to the dogs. The world is going to the dogs as much as ever. So if we look outside, we can't be at peace. Why not look inside and be peaceful? The very nature of the world is to disturb and agitate our mind. That's why Bhagavan said, as far as possible, we should avoid allowing our mind to dwell on worldly things. Because there's no end to it. In the world, if one problem is solved, another problem is created. There's always injustice because people are greedy. Some people want more for themselves, and so other people have less. The world is full of injustice, full of you cannot, it's not the nature of the world to be a place of peace and justice. Why? Because the world is shaped by ego, and ego is full of greed and want for me. So it's we may not be as greedy as other people, but none of us are perfect. We all have we all like to have a little bit more in our bank account. We like to be a little bit more secure. We like to save up something for a rainy day. None of us are completely letting go of everything. So how to let go of everything? Let go of ego and you let go of everything else. That's why Bhagavan says, investigating what it is giving up everything in verse 26 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. So we need to, by turning our attention within, that we can give up everything. And the more we give up, there's a beautiful verse in tīrndār. Tīrndār is a work in Tamil. It's got many very beautiful ideas on life in general. But it's got a chapter on renunciation. And one of the things it says there, this is a verse Bhagavan often used to quote, Yādalin nīngina nodal, ādalin nilan. From whatever you withdraw yourself or whatever you give up, you're free from the suffering caused by that thing. That is the very nature of things to cause us problem. If you haven't got money, it's a problem. If you've got money, it's a problem because you've then got to keep it and you don't want to lose it. So it's only by withdrawing our mind from all these things, giving up all these things, giving up all concern about anything, but we can be at peace. So it's always important to remember Bhagavan's path is the path of complete surrender. And the more we surrender, the happier we will be.